Class, I think, yeah. So good evening, class. I think so far we have done with, I'll just recap all the topics of Indian geography which we have done. That means when you are starting from your Indian geography, we start with India, size and location. That is, you will talk about latitudinal, longitudinal extent and neighboring countries, and also what is the GMT. That is the first topic. You have to be very sure about what is the latitudinal and the longitudinal extent of the country. Second thing is we talk about the physical features, that is the Himalayas, the northern plains, the Deccan Plateau, then the coastal areas, the peninsular India, and also the islands, that is Andaman and the Nicobar Islands, the Lakshadweep Islands. All these have to be very clear. Okay. Then you have the third topic we talk about is mainly the river systems. What are Himalayan rivers? What are the peninsular rivers? What is the difference between the two rivers? Okay. And then we talk about agriculture. We talk about agriculture mainly. I think somebody missed, they said. Pearly is not there today, Shailaja. Okay, whatever it is. So agriculture is one aspect where you will be talking about the features, the problems. Pearly is not there. She was asking about agriculture, I think. Today she's not there.
Today she's not there.
Okay, fine. Actually, she was asking me, or somebody asked me, I don't know who asked me about agriculture, but I'll just brief that agriculture also. Agriculture is where you talk about the features of agriculture, what are the problems of agriculture, the cropping patterns, that is the 3 seasons, Kharif season, Rabi season, and the Zayat season. Then we talk about the green revolution, the white revolution. These are the two important things, and what are the important reforms that have been introduced in our country in order to improve agriculture in our country, like abolition of the zamindari system, then coming to the concept of distribution of land, then comes the concept of institutional reforms. Like, for example, nowadays you have something called as crop insurance to the farmers, and they are also given the Kisan credit card. What are the new things that have come into existence? Because you are going to write a competitive examination, you should also know the new farm laws that have been passed by the Modi government recently. What are the laws that have been made and what are the benefits? This also you should be able to know or gather the information about the changes that have been brought about by the farm laws and why there is an opposition also to that. These points you should be able to know. Maybe you will be knowing only the positive aspect, because in the examinations they will never ask you, but sometimes they may ask you why they have been opposed or something like that. So you have to brief yourself and you have to know about what are the new farm laws that are being passed by Modi government and why there is an opposition to the farm laws. This is also you have to brush up along with the things that are existing in our country. Next one we talked about is irrigation. Irrigation is what are the various dams that are there in our country. That is a multi-purpose projects we have, and what is the use of irrigation and what are the irrigation projects mainly. What the main one is Nagarjun Sagar, Tungabhadra, Bhakranangal, Hirakud. These are all the important projects. That means what is a multi-purpose project is meant a project which will be serving a number of purposes simultaneously: agriculture, fishing, hydroelectricity, irrigation, then drinking water purposes, recreation. These are all the various purposes by which a multi-purpose project will be constructed. That is one aspect you have to learn. Then I talked about minerals and energy resources, why minerals are important to your country and why they are economically viable, and what are the various mineral belts we have in our country. So energy resources are, we talk about the power projects we have, and the main thing we talk about is the thermal energy, the hydel energy. All these are the different sources of energies we have in our country. Next, we talked about manufacturing industries, where I said what is the importance of manufacturing industry, what are agglomeration economies. This word you should know. What is an agglomeration economy is that when a number of industries come together as a cluster and set up their industries in a particular area by utilizing the factors that are existing. What are the factors that is needed for establishment of industries are land, labor, capital, electricity. Then you talk about water, availability of proper skilled labor, government policies, nearness to the markets. These are all certain factors. Sometimes it so happens that you may not get all these factors at one place, but the industrialists try to pool all these factors and set up. That is what you call it as an agglomeration economy. But nowadays, the governments are coming up with a concept called as special economic zones. You call them as special economic zones, are where the governments themselves are providing all these facilities so that all the industrialists or the businessmen can come to this particular area and set up. Like I gave you the example of the industrial estate of Balanagar, we have Nacharam, we have in Hyderabad I'm talking about. In Bangalore also you have all the IT industries. Wherever number of industries are established, that is called as a industrial estate also. Okay, so manufacturing industries, what is the importance? Once again, when you are talking about manufacturing industries, link it with the current topic. Like for example, Made in India, Atmanirbharta, then you talk about Made in India, Skill India. These are all the Digital India. These are all the various programs that have been launched by the Modi government in order to increase. That means what is the other one we talk about is that local the concept I'm not getting. Atmanirbharta is nothing but manufacturing in our own country. So Atmanirbharta, Made in India, Skill India, Digital India, all these are the concepts which are related to the manufacturing industries. So wherever you're talking about geography, children, immediately you connect it with the current topics, because economics and geography are interlinked concepts. So when we talk about industries, we directly talk about all these programs. So you should have an idea as to what are the various programs that are launched by the government of India, because that is very important as far as the geography concept is concerned. It's not just you will talk what is there in the textbook. You have to know all these also. Sometimes they may say that in order to boost the manufacturing industries, what are the various schemes that have been launched by the Modi government? That is the Atmanirbharta, the Skill India, or Made in India, buy local, go local. These are all the concepts that have been coming to you. So you should know the slogans also there. Okay, so when you know that, that means you have the current idea. You are connecting the topic with the current affairs also. Then I talked about lifelines of the Indian economy. Under lifelines of Indian economy, I talked about railways, I talked about the roadways, waterways, airways. And also under communication facilities, we talk about under roadways, we talked about the comparison between roadways and railways. Why roadways have an advantage over the railways? Why? Because it is easy to construct, easy to maintain. You can construct the roads anywhere, higher altitudes, higher gradients, anything can be done. So geographically, no problem when you are laying the roads. The problem comes only when you are laying the railway tracks. So that highlights you should be able to know. And especially we have the golden quadrilateral, we have the super highways, we have the national highways, we have the state highways. These are all the various types of roads we have, which you should know. Then coming to the railways, railways also are considered to be the greatest public transport in India, which provide lots of jobs to a number of people, and they are also connecting the India. That means they are also considered to be the national integrating transport system. Why it is called as a national integration is that because it carries the people through the length and breadth of the country. That is from Hyderabad to Jammu, or from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, or from east to west or west to east, whatever it is the railways that will be connecting. That is the reason why the railways are considered to be the national integration force. That is what you have to know about the transport. So what are the new types of railways that are coming into existence? You can give the example of your metro service. You can also talk about the new railways that have come into existence and how they are providing the services to the people as such. So you will know about the broad gauge, narrow gauge, and also the other gauges that we have, and the various zones that we have in the railways. So there are 16 zones as such. All these 16 zones you should be knowing. That means entire India is given to 16 zones by which the railways will be operating through the length and breadth of the country. Clear? Then we talk about the airways. When we talk about the airways, they are the fastest and the most modern means of transport as such. And we have something called as Air India and what is the other one? Can anyone complete? Air India and what are the two types of airways we have? Everything, if I say how. Indian Airlines and Air India are the two important wings we have of airlines. What is the difference between Indian Airlines and Air India? Indian Airlines.
Air India.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, in Air India basically goes for international travel.
Very good. They are international services, and Indian Airlines are domestic services. Apart
Yes.
from that, we also have private things also. We have the Pavanhans helicopter services, which will be providing the helicopters to all those inaccessible areas during the time of the floods or emergency situations. This particular helicopters are used. Even the ONGC also uses this helicopters only to reach these areas as such. Then in communication, we talk about post offices, we talk about the telecommunication sector. Then we talk about the tourism. These are all the aspects of lifelines of the Indian economy. Am I clear till here? These are the topics which we can cover. Then I also explained about the climate of the country, that is Indian monsoon. How does monsoon enter our country? How does it cover? What are the various factors that will be causing the rainfall in our country, that I have explained. Then we talked about natural vegetation, flora and the fauna. And I think in the last class, I was talking about the extinct species and endemic species, vulnerable species, and what are the steps that are taken by the government of India in order to protect the flora and the fauna. These are all the topics which are usually covered in the Indian geography. Usually 9th and 10th, you can take all these are covered in that. Entire 9th and 10th syllabus, if you take, these topics will be found in that. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we also did sectors of Indian economy.
Hi. I also, that is economics, that also I have done. That is sectors of Indian economy. Is that we talked about the three sectors: the primary sectors, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector, and what is their contribution to the Indian economy, and what is the role played by them also. They also come under that. I think a few economics topics also talked about, like microeconomics, macroeconomics. Then I think I also spoke about poverty at length. I talked about poverty also. What is poverty? What are the dimensions of poverty? What are the causes of poverty? And what are the various poverty alleviation programs that have been brought about, like the, you call it as a Swarna Jayanti, Berojgar Yojana. Then you have Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. There are so many schemes are there, poverty alleviation. When we are talking about poverty alleviation, you also talk about the criticism of all these programs also. For every program, children, there is also a criticism which you also should know, because that is a question which can be asked. It's like an open-ended question. That is why these poverty alleviation programs are not considered to be successful. Why they were not successful is that that means the usually the poverty alleviation programs are targeted for those people who are living below the poverty line. First of all, what is a poverty line? How do you explain poverty line? Huh? That means the people who are all living below the per capita income. Every country will have a basic amount of money. If that people are falling below that basic amount of money, then you call those people living below the poverty line. For example, if you take the world over, what is the basic amount that you should have? That means now it is, I think, is to $2. $2 if you don't, I think it is per day or per month. I'm very sorry, I'm not able to recollect it. So if a particular amount is specified by the government, and if the family is falling below that income, you call them as a below poverty line, or you call them as the BPL families. Now, all these poverty alleviation programs are targeted to these people only. That means these programs are meant for those families only. But what is happening in our country is that though the programs are made for the BPL families, the benefits are not reaching those people whom they should reach. So there is a gap between the making of the program, implementation of the program, and the benefits which are received by the people is not going in a proper channel. That is the reason why poverty is not reduced in our country. This is also one reason we give. So the poverty alleviation programs should be there, but implementation is a problem, because when it is passed by the government, it is passed. But when it comes to the implementation aspect, the officers there, whoever is there to implement it and pass on the benefits to that particular category of the people, it is not done. That is the reason why the poverty alleviation programs are criticized as such, that they are not able to bring any benefits, and maybe poverty is continuing for a longer period of time also. Then one more thing we talk about is that too much of free things which you supply, that means you are not utilizing the productivity of the labor. There is one more school of thought which says that if you go on giving everything free of cost to the people will get habited that everything they will get free of cost, and their productivity will come down, and their contribution to the country is almost zero. If I'm getting free of cost everything, why will I work? So instead, there is one school of economists who say that instead of giving free things to the people, create employment opportunities so that they contribute to the economy, increase your production, increase the goods or services, by which you will be able to generate the income instead of giving free of cost, which becomes a burden on the government. Just freely, if you are supplying everything to the people, it is a burden on the government. From where does the government get the money? It is again the people. That means the higher income people, the middle income people are paying the tax, and we are giving the money and they are enjoying it. Instead, you create employment opportunities to them. This is also one more argument you have to remember as far as poverty is concerned. Yes, children? Anything else you want me to tell in Indian geography? Yes, ma'am. No? If you don't talk, how, children? Then it becomes difficult for me. Is it clear till here, Indian geography? Anything
Yes,
you
ma'am.
want me to tell? Aditi, Vishnu, Yashwini. Okay. So if you are feeling okay or anything, yes, Aditi.
It's clear, ma'am.
It's clear. So these are the topics you will be going through, and any other doubts you have, if you're not able to follow any topic, you can please get back to that topic and ask me to explain that. So today I will just share the screen, and that particular topic is there, which I will go through that topic, you can understand. Okay, just a second. Shailaja, I can't share the screen.
Yeah, I have allowed sharing.
Okay. Yeah, so we will start with geomorphology and earthquakes, continental rift, plate tectonics, and sea floor spreading. These are all the concepts which we talk about. So in this, first we will start with what are endogenic and exogenic forces. Now, the surface of the earth is not very flat, but is rather unevenly spread out. This also, you know, the interior of the earth when you talk about. Why it is not flat? The reason is that because it is the presence of the landforms, including the mountains, plains, and the hills. That is the reason why you cannot have a flat surface. So these uneven landforms are formed and deformed over a while in an ongoing process due to the influence of internal and external pressure from within and above the surface of the earth. Why these uneven landforms we have? For example, if you take the mountains are high. That means they are growing in a straight form. Plateaus are usually, they are called as a tableland. And then you also have the hills, which are all considered to be even and uneven. Why are these landforms formed? Is it because of the influence of the pressures that are taking place externally as well as internally also? So we can define endogenic. Endogenic means internal, exogenic means external forces as the two major geomorphic pressures that led to the Earth's movements and give shape to the Earth's surface as such. So endogenic forces are internal, exogenic forces are external. These two are called as the geomorphic pressures that are leading to the Earth's movements and give shape to the Earth's surface. So why there are movements in the Earth is that it is actually said that the Earth is always constantly moving and floating under the tectonic plates as such. So when these plates are moving or adjusting themselves, that causes something called as the earthquake. Earthquake is nothing but when these plates, the tectonic plates, they keep moving here and there, they will be adjusting themselves. It leads to something called as the earthquakes as such. So that is the reason why this, because of this movement only, the shape of the Earth has come into existence. So when these internal and external changes occur continuously, chemical changes and stress are triggered on the surface of the Earth, which eventually leads to the formation of the uneven terrain. So why do you have uneven terrains? In some places the land is very flat, in some places very uneven land is there. Why does it happen? It is because of these internal and external forces. They create a stress and they trigger these particular changes which are taking place on the Earth as such. So what are endogenic forces? Are those? They are endogenic forces are the pressure that originates inside the Earth. Therefore, they are also called as the internal forces. They lead to vertical and horizontal movement and result in subsidence, land upliftment, volcanism, faulting, folding, earthquakes, etc. So when these particular, that means there is a vertical movement, there is a horizontal movement also. So when these movements are taking place, there can be any number of changes that can take place on the Earth. One is called as subsidence. That means they may come down. Sometimes the Earth may cave in. You call it as a road got caved in. It is nothing but because of the pressures of the endogenic forces. Then you have land upliftment. Sometimes the land is lifted up also, and sometimes a volcano may erupt. You all know about the volcanic eruptions that can take place. Faulting and folding. Faulting means the breaks, and folding is refers to the formation of the mountains. And then you also have the earthquakes. Like that, there are so many things that can take place on the Earth's surface as such. So endogenic forces are land building forces that play a crucial role. These are also called as internal pressure as they originate and are located below the surface of the Earth, which you call it as the interior of the Earth. You have something called as the core, the crust. These are all the important layers of the Earth where all these changes will be taking place. Okay, then you have something called as heat, radioactivity, tidal and rotational friction from the Earth results in the creation of this energy. So why does this energy come into existence? Because of the radioactivity. You also have something called as a tidal and the rotational friction. That means constantly the Earth is moving, because of which also it can take place as such. So the main process involved under this are volcanism, folding and faulting. We call it as faulting is the cracks that can occur as such. Now, the endogenic forces are again further broke down into two major forms. So the endogenic forces are the internal forces, which are caused because of the heat or because of the radioactivity or the tidal rotation. And because of this, some chemical processes will occur and they will trigger and form in different forms of landforms. So they are again divided into two forms. What are they? Slow movements. These are also referred to as diastrophic forces, which results in change over some time. So slow movements are also called as diastrophic forces. This word you have to remember. Diastrophic forces. Slow movements are diastrophic forces. They will be resulting changes over some time. That is, immediately there may not be a change. Maybe after some years, millions of years, the change can take place. Sudden motions, that means these are the visible motions and includes significant landform changes like the earthquakes and the volcanic eruptions. So slow movements are in course of time. For example, if a mountain has to form or a plateau has to form or a new landform has to form, they will take millions of years, which is called as slow movement. But what is a sudden motion is that you all know that the volcanic eruption or an earthquake are examples of the sudden movements as such. So in simple terms, diastrophic forces can be defined as the pressure that is created due to the motion of the solid material on the Earth's surface. This includes all the processes that raise, move, or build up the parts on the surface. So because of the solid material that is present on the Earth's surface, because of which the movement is happening, and which will also result in the raising or building up of the different landforms existing on the Earth's surface. Now, epirogenic motions. This is the process of warping or upliftment of large parts of the Earth's surface. That means the land is lifted up, formation of a plateau. Orogenic movements, this is essentially the process of mountain building that involves major folding and affects the long as well as the narrow belts of the surface. So orogenic movements are movements which will result in the formation of the mountains because they will fold the mountains. We call it as a fold. The mountains will be appearing in the form of the folds. That is what you call it as the orogenic movements. Then you have the earthquakes that occur due to relatively minor local movements. It all depends upon the areas where you are living. That means if you take the Earth's surface, certain areas are constantly in that particular, that means they're earthquake prone areas. That means you give it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers usually they give. So if you are in the 4th or in the 5th zone, you are prone to earthquakes. It is understood. Like for example, you take Japan. Japan is a country constantly getting the earthquakes. It will get earthquakes because it is lying in that particular area. Same way in India also, if you take, there are certain places, certain states in India which are prone to earthquakes. You cannot do anything there because they are lying in that area. Usually they divide it into 5 parts. So if you are lying in the 5th or the 4th part, I think usually you are exposed to earthquakes, or that particular area will be experiencing the earthquakes. Am I clear? Then you have the other one is the horizontal movements of the crustal plates or the plate tectonics. I told you just now, the earth is always floating and the tectonic plates will be moving in horizontal movement. When they are having that particular movement, horizontal movement also, changes can take place on the earth's surface as such. Then orogenic, epirogenic. So what are the features is that they are caused with the horizontal pressure that acts on the earth's surface from side to side. So they are the horizontal pressure which will be moving from side to side as such. And orogenic movements is also referred to as a mountain building. They can be categorized into 2 major pressures, such as the pressure of tension and pressure of compression. Compression means which get compressed between 2 things. You call it as a compression body, you call it as. Okay. Then what are the vertical movements are? Actually, this much of not required, but still I will give you the other one. What are the differences between endogenic forces and exogenic forces? This is a very important topic we should know. Based on origin, endogenic forces originate from within the surface of the earth, exogenic that occurs on above the surface. It is understood, internal and external you call it as. Endogenic forces include earthquakes, mountain formation. Exogenic forces include the tidal force of the moon and the erosion of the earth. So endogenic forces, because of the pressure that is triggered inside the surface of the earth, earthquakes will occur. Mountain formation also will take place because of the pressures that are built up inside the earth's surface. What are exogenic forces? Are the tidal forces. You all know that we have the tidal waves, we have the tidal movements, we have the neap tides, we have the high tides. All these tides will occur because of the gravitational pull of the moon. This you will learn in your 7th and 6th classes. You will be learning about the tides, the neap tides and the high tides. These will occur on the time of the full moon day, new moon day, all these. And during the certain periods of time, these tides are very high. And tides are also useful for the fisher, for the people who travel in boats and ships, because they need not put a lot of effort using the tidal waves. They will be traveling also. So people used to know the tides, and accordingly they used to plan their what do you call it as they used to plan their destinations also, traveling also. Okay. Endogenic forces can result in both slow or sudden motions. Exogenic forces will, one second. Hello? No problem. Ma'am, I'll call you after 5 times. 5 minutes I'll talk. Yeah. So endogenic forces can result in slow or sudden motions, and exogenic forces will always lead to slow motions. Now, is it clear what are endogenic and what are exogenic? Yes. Endogenic are? Come on, children, answer. Endogenic forces are Aditi, Sneha. Come on, ma. Endogenic forces are internal forces. Exogenic are
External forces.
external forces, and they are usually related to the tidal forces as such. Endogenic forces produce after effects that are visible only after it causes a sudden damage. Exogenic forces create changes visible over a period of thousands or millions of years. That's what I told you, that when you talk about that, the formation of the mountains, when can you see is that only after millions of years only you will find. Like for example, you take the Aravalli mountains, you talk about the Himalayan mountains, though Aravallis are considered to be the oldest mountains in the world. The Himalayas are considered to be the youngest. Youngest means little lesser million years. They are more million years. Not that they are born yesterday or today. Early million years, you call it as the Himalayas as such. So the processes that take place at or near the Earth's surface are called as exogenic process. The processes are a part of the denudation process, which involves wearing away of the Earth's surface. I think this also I have explained what is denudation and weathering. Denudation and weathering is that the physical phenomena or the physical properties. That can anyone tell me what is denudation and weathering? This also I think it comes in 8th and 9th classes in geography. Any idea, children? Denudation and weathering? No. Denudation and weathering means it is said that during the time of the summer season, there is always a concept of rocks called as they expand. Okay. They expand. When they expand, they develop the cracks. Because of the heat, they expand and cracks will appear. Naturally, when a huge mountain is there, when it expands, it will develop some cracks. Now, when the rainy season comes, the water percolates into these cracks of the mountains, by which over a period of time, not that immediately whenever it rains, it breaks. Over a period of time, when the water gets settled into these particular cracks, the mountains will break into small rocks, and then they flow into the river, and then they get accumulated at a place. This is called as denudation. That means the weathering process. How does weathering take place? This is a natural process which occurs as such. Erosion is also one of the important aspects. Usually whenever there is a rain, a lot of soil gets eroded. The amount of erosion, that means erosion is common. You cannot stop the erosion, but how much of soil is eroded is very important. So it all depends upon the measures that are taken by the people. That means if you have large number of trees, for example, then the soil erosion is always less. But if you're not planting the trees, why? Because in biology, you will be learning that the stems will be holding the soil. The fertile layer of the soil will be held by the roots. That is the reason why you have to plant number of trees. If you are not planting, if there is a lot of deforestation, that is the reason why soil erosion is very high. Especially in our country, soil erosion is very high. So how do they calculate this? That per hectare, how much of soil is eroded? So totally out of the agricultural area or the total area of the country, how many hectares of soil is eroded? higher the hectares of soil is eroded, that means we are not taking steps to stop the soil erosion. So these are all the natural factors that can occur, which we have to take care to protect the nature as such. Am I clear? Exogenic process. So you can take this table as such. So once again, I'll read this exogenic processes. They obtain energy from the gradients generated by tectonic factors, processes, their corresponding driving forces, and atmosphere as such. That means how do they get this energy? Is that it is because of the tectonic plates. Already I mentioned that the movement of the tectonic plates. Remember that movement of the tectonic plates. That is the by which they get the energy. Okay, precipitation and temperature are the two significant climatic components that regulate the different processes. Precipitation is the rainfall. What are the different forms of precipitation? Why today nobody is talking anything? Children, what are
Rain,
the
snow.
different? Very good. Rain, snow, hail, dew. All these are called as the forms of precipitation. So precipitation, temperature are the other two significant climatic competitions. They will be regulating the exogenic process also. So they are covered under a common term called as denudation, which means to uncover. Just now I explained uncovering. Weathering, transportation, and erosion are comprised of denudation. That is what I told you now. Weathering is where the rocks get cracks. Then transportation is at where the pebbles will be transported and leads to erosion also. So gravitational force acts upon every material on the earth having a sloping surface and inclined to create the movement of matter in a downward slope. So gravitational pull plays a very important role here also. So these are the explanations you can talk about: endogenic forces, exogenic forces. So what are endogenic forces? Are sudden forces, are earthquake, volcano, and landslides. You all know what are landslides. Usually they happen in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. You have landslides. Suddenly you have a burst like that. The entire thing will come down in the form, the rocks will be rolling down and they will come and accumulate, and then they will block each and every way also. Then you have diastrophic forces, that is building the mountains. Exogenic forces are erosional and depositional. That means they erode and deposit also. Like for example, river, wind, sea waves, and the glaciers. What is a glacier? A moving ice is called as, yes.
Ma'am, huge block of ice in a
Very
river.
good. A huge block of the ice moving is called as a glacier. So all these definitions you should know, children. What is a plateau? What is a plain? What is a mountain? What is a glacier? What is an
Can you
island?
join again, Shamla ma'am? This meeting will end in a minute. Or will you
Should I stop? I'll stop here and then I will continue next week.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Give them some homework. We'll give a test in the previous lesson and this lesson.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I've sent last week about which one I've sent my students. I have sent one thing. I just checked my, what did I send?
please
Right,
join
sir.
again, students. Neha's presentation is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay then, children, you can go through.
You
Okay?
can give the syllabus, ma'am, and one test we will conduct next week.
Okay, fine.
One small
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.